Welcome to Time to Press Pause, a podcast for CEOs by CEOs. I'm your host, Ellen Williams, CEO of the Salient Strategist, and today I'm speaking with Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier. Dr. Peltier, better known as MH, is a CEO, keynote speaker, executive coach, leadership psychologist, and workplace mental health expert. She has over 20 years of experience as a leadership psychologist, executive coach, and senior leader in the corporate, insurance, and governance sectors. Her award-winning book, The Resilience Plan, a strategic approach to optimizing your work performance and mental health, was named a top 5 book to read by Inc. magazine and Forbes. Holding both a PhD and an MBA, she translates psychology research into strategies professionals, leaders, and their teams need to thrive. Hello and welcome, Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier, otherwise known as MH.
Hi, Ellen. Pleasure to be here.
I'm really excited to have you on Time to Press Pause today. We've had the opportunity to send some emails back and forth, and we finally got this scheduled. So I am with bated breath, waiting to hear your press pause story.
That's wonderful. Well, number one, I have to say, I really love the name of your podcast. I think it serves as a beautiful reminder for all of us to take pauses in smaller, larger ways and frequently, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, throughout life. Really love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, really mean it. And so one of my, notice how I say this, there's been many, but my most recent one was one that I realized a bit proactively that I needed to take. It's related to my book that got published in February 2024. That's my first and probably only book. But therefore, this whole process was entirely new to me. And I was working with different people who were much more knowledgeable than me about the process and everything. And others that have gone through it, other authors, other first time, second time, third time authors in this beautiful community, really, that I did not even know existed, but it was there. You get to a point where the book is written and all the changes have been made and all this. And for me, that moment happened where most things were done was about 6 months prior to publication date. And that's the point where many people were telling me, make sure you protect your time, the month prior the launch, during the month, and the month after, which is not my usual way of doing things. I mean, number one, I was thinking the book is written, so keep going, full steam ahead. Now you can get back to doing all the things you were doing. That's usually how I would have approached it. Knowing that this was potentially bigger and demanding in terms of time and energy demands, and knowing that I knew nothing about this process, I listened, thankfully, which many other times I haven't, but this one time, somehow, maybe getting older, I don't know, I listened. And so that's how I'm thinking about this as the press pause. It was not a full press pause, but it was a press pause on the usual way you do things and think ahead about what's coming, in this case, this particular event. Use knowledge that others have discovered or learned from others and try this. Actually. And so I did arrange my schedules, my commitments in different areas of professional work and personal travels, visits, different things to protect the month prior, protect the month during, and protect the month after, which meant choices. Now choices as I got closer that I was still saying, do I really need to do this? But I stuck to it. And it paid off so well. It was such the right thing to do. I was so glad I did because exactly as people had said, it turned out to be a very busy time exactly for these 3 months and others before and after. But it was good that this had received a bit of planning attention from me so that I could maintain within these moments the times of breaks, the micro press pause moments, the space was there for them to happen, given the amount of new unusual demands that I was not used to dealing with, obviously. That would be my recent press pause story that I'm really glad I took.
I love that you said press pause on the usual way you do things. A lot of the press pause stories we've heard are a full stop. Like people press pause, or they press pause within their day, to take a break, to take a breath. But that doesn't mean they're not going to resume the way they usually do. So the fact that your press pause was to take advice on something that you also said was new and unusual, so that you didn't just run in full speed the way you normally do. So press pause on the usual way you do things. So you said that was good for you. Can you expand on how that was good for you and what you might have done differently had you not taken that advice?
Yes. For me, it was different. And, it's one of those recommendations I even have in my book. So I guess I was using a bit of what's in there, might as well. But even without my book, some of these things we all know will make sense, right? If we think ahead of, say, the next year, the moments in the year that tend to be your busiest times, the moments this year where more larger, bigger events are likely to happen. If we did do that, and whenever we do, and be realistic about the other demands we put around ourselves, we will have a better balance between the various demands we have and the energy resources we have to deal with them. We know this. I knew this, certainly, but it's as if I had mostly operated with bring it on, doesn't matter, keep going. It may be more than what you want, but you'll go through and it's all exciting. So yes, basically, that was sort of my approach from before. If I had done this in this case, I know with certainty I would not have been as present in those what turned out to be very meaningful moments for me, the pre-book launch, the many book launch events. Some were in New York, some were here, some were virtual. They're beautiful moments. And had I been low energy, burnt out, tired, exhausted, running after 5 things at the same time, I would not have been as present and giving my best, number one, so that's potentially good as well, but also enjoying these moments. These are things that just would not have been there if I had not done it this way. Having gone through it now, I would share the advice with other authors. Yes, it is a good, very, very brilliant thing to do.
The ability to press pause, take that step back. I'm, first of all, very happy that you took the advice, because what you just shared as far as being present, and it's hard to do that. You mentioned burnout, but even if you're not dealing with burnout, if you're just juggling a lot of different things and you actually don't give yourself the time and the space to focus on what's important, and certainly a book launch is extremely important, and you've gone through the process of writing it, you would want to be present. So it sounds like that was a great outcome.
Yes, it was. And what you're just saying now reminds me another positive outcome is, and it's true whenever we decide to even more proactively, strategically, to some degree, plan how we're going to go through demands. That consequence of being more present, also that not multitasking, thinking about 5 things at the same time, also allows you to optimize opportunities. That's when we can be creative, as opposed to doing this thing because we're running after the next thing. We're doing this thing, and through whatever's happening here, the new people you're meeting, this person saying this, you may have an additional idea. It may connect with something else. And now that brings all of us towards this next thing that, had you not had the brain space to have that creativity and to have the energy to then say it moving forward and all this, many other things would not have happened. So there's that aspect of it too.
the brain space. I could use some of that. For
right?
sure.
We
And
can all,
funny
yeah.
that, yeah. And funny you said, it's something you knew. It's something you're even recommending in your book. And how often is it that the things we do know and the things we even give advice about is that's not always the way we actually move forward. And it's easy to get sort of caught up in the way you do things, right? Business as usual. So it sounds to me like you may have had one of those creative ideas come your way during this process. So my question is, when you started the process of considering writing a book and then deciding you were going to, and then the process of writing, did you have any anticipation of what the launch would be like?
No, not in the earlier stages at all. I was not at all thinking about this. Reflecting back, it could be because it was taking all of my thinking, just stay focused on my reader. What do I need to bring in the book to bring them from point A to point B? What stays in the book? What gets back out? It was that constant, oh, does my reader need this? So a lot of the focus was so on the book that no, during that time, I was not thinking about any of these things. That only happened after. In fact, even then, I'm not the one who thought about this. My publisher said, okay, now we need you to start thinking about what you'd like to do for your book launch. And that's when I started being creative there. But during the writing, no, it was just on the book.
I like that your approach was about the reader and not necessarily the information that you wanted to get out. I'm sure there's a combination of both of those things. How can I communicate what I want to in a way in which is going to be understandable to the reader?
And useful, because that's the thing. There were
And
so
useful.
many, I mean, given the intention for the book which was to help professionals and leaders get an edge, given all the demands they're facing, and be more strategic about their resilience and describe that process. So that was the objective for the book. And I spend every day, I'm reading academic research and reports and that kind of thing. There's many fascinating things I could write and that I did write, in fact, and took right out. Because do we need exactly this to get to where we're going? Maybe not. Maybe that was just a sentence and now we're moving. So no, that given the direction for the book, that was a good guiding principle to stay focused on. The book is for someone. And so let's make sure it is.
So it's for someone, but it's for someone else.
So it's
I
not so much
see.
about what you feel like writing or what you think is interesting or all these things. It's you're writing it for someone to read it, for someone else, yes, in some ways, but it's useful. What needs to go there? Yeah.
I appreciate the insight you just shared with the would-be authors that are listening. You had also said that the creativity that happened during the pause, that you get new ideas. Can you share one of the ideas that happened during that pause?
So I decided to plan for that pausing on the usual ways I do things for those 3 months. Okay, prior, during, and after. And so where I found more availability to be creative were in the many conversations and events that happened particularly there. They happened also after that. Obviously, I have not stopped being creative, Ellen. But so, for example, I was doing a number of things. One of them was an in-person launch at Barnes & Noble on Fifth Avenue in New York. And then there were some virtual launch events with podcasters, one that's based in America, one that's based in Paris. The one based in America was in New Jersey. And so last minute, there was an opportunity for him to actually join me in New York in person. So we were recording the podcast in person. But that then meant, okay, let's find a place where we could do this that works for both of us, that has the right space and all this. This is an example where you can take this opportunity if you have a bit of space, bandwidth. If everything is tight and by the minute and that kind of thing, you can't you can have this conversation. Now, because we're in person, of course, that means this whole thing takes a bit more time because now we're arriving, being together, post conversation, which usually if you're virtual, this is more contained. But because we're in person, we're now talking about family and, all these other things. And then realizing we both know this other person. Oh, let me connect you with this person. And then you're able to go with these flows. And that's one of the things I learned if there are would-be authors and listening to our conversations. For me, I was thinking that the book would be a lot of work. It was more work than I thought, but it was also a way richer experience. Because of these examples or even conversations like today, like the chances that you and I would have had this conversation had the book not happened, relatively low. Yeah, you do these things and they bring a number of additional opportunities, which, as leaders, as business owners, as professionals, we appreciate this. We like new ideas, new combinations, new opportunities, the next place for us to evolve into. Definitely found that the overall experience added even more of this.
I certainly have learned from your story and greatly appreciate that you shared your story and elaborated on some of the finer points. Do you have advice for CEOs, leaders, future authors on when they would identify when it's time for them to press pause?
So, I'm also a leadership psychologist and an executive coach. And so I would say we do need pauses. And that's in part connecting back to my first comment about how much I love the name of your podcast. We need them all day, every day, constantly in bigger and smaller ways. My advice would be, especially if we're thinking about leaders, CEOs, think ahead about your need for a pause the same way you think ahead for so many things related to work. You're thinking about the trends, you're thinking about your next innovation, you're thinking about your financial year, your strategic plan, you're thinking ahead in so many ways. My suggestion would be think ahead also strategically about your resilience, which is truly the core message of my book. Need to think ahead for ourselves too.
So think ahead as you're planning things and plan the opportunities to pause.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
Plan your pause. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Plan
great
your
advice.
pause. Let's go with that. I like it.
Yep, I like it too. That's great advice. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for being with me here today on Time to Press Pause.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Time to Press Pause. To learn more about Dr. Peltier, go to drmarie-helene.com. To learn more about me, go to thesalientstrategist.com. And be sure to join us again wherever you listen to your podcasts.